I was behind the scenes a lot doing graphic design and videography and field producing. And then I had a reporter actually push me to try to be a reporter. So that's how I got in front of the camera. You're running around chasing a story, getting phone calls at 3 a.m. that you have to be live at 5. I remember we were storm chasing a couple of times. I got pelted with hail and I was bleeding and they were like, okay, you're going to be live in an hour. I'm like, great. Sometimes it was so hard to keep a straight face and you just started like laughing and you're live and you're like, we'll see you at 10. In West Texas, I was an oil and gas reporter. Oil and gas at the time was booming.
Right.
So it was more positive stories. I'll never forget one story. We arrived before the police and a bus had gone off an overpass and it was a prison bus. We got there and we just saw all these dead bodies. There was no conversation about how to deal with it once you get home, how to shut off or how to compartmentalize. That was when I was working as a reporter nightside in Dallas. You know, I'm ready to kind of step away and work for myself, and then the company kind of grew from there.
Hey there, welcome to the Mental Perk podcast. I'm Carla Hutcherson, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Brandy Mock, entrepreneur, author, and community leader. And we're here to talk about real people, real issues, and real talk.
Welcome back to the Mental Perk. Brandy and I are super excited to have Sarah Strackhouse. She is a seasoned journalist and an entrepreneur with a passion for storytelling. Since 2020, she has worked as a reporter, a producer, an anchor, a videographer, and a graphic designer for major networks. And some of those networks include Fox Business News in New York, the CW in Dallas, CBS, NBC, and Time Warner Cable throughout the nation. She just has just a world of knowledge, and she also has 2 of her own TV shows. She's going to be telling us more about them, and she runs and leads Strackhouse Media. When she's not being a super entrepreneur, she loves to spend time with her husband, her 2 beautiful little boys, and her 3 dogs. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. My gosh. I was going to say, I should have sent a shorter bio.
We're going to post that, so if you missed anything.
Well, to start it off, I have to say, today is February the 13th, and it's National Galentine's Day.
Oh, I didn't even
I
think about
they
that.
just made that a deal. Like, they nationalized Galentine's Day.
All right.
Perfect timing.
Isn't that awesome? We get to celebrate all
So
the
ironic.
I know.
Sarah, you have all of this great reporter, journalist experience. I want you to tell us a little bit about what was life like in front of the camera for you.
I didn't always start off in front of the camera. I was behind the scenes a lot doing graphic design and videography and field producing and all that stuff. And then I had a reporter actually push me to try to be a reporter. So that's how I got in front of the camera. And then in front of the camera, you think it's going to be glamorous and this and that, but really you're running around chasing a story, getting phone calls at 3 a.m. that you have to be live at 5, or you're going home at 9 p.m. and you get a call, hey, sorry, you have to do the 10 o'clock hit. This just broke.
And you're making a major U-turn.
Major U-turn, yes. You're like literally exhausted, about to go home. You're wiping off your makeup, and then they're like, oh, come back in. I'm like, well, thank God I had my to-go makeup with me.
I should say, that's the one thing I've always wondered. I know this is kind of, do they do your makeup, hair and makeup there? Or?
It depends. So It depends what station you're at. It depends what timing you're there. Okay. Usually the early morning people, there's not people there in time for that, but it just depends.
That's when you need it the most.
I know. That's when you need the bags covered. That's when you need all of the things taken care of, and then no one's there. Yeah, but I mean, there's certain stations that do, certain stations that don't, so I've worked at both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Depends.
I've always wondered that question. Like, do they get their hair and makeup ready, or do they?
But a lot of times you're like out in a news van for like 6 or 7 hours, and there's no one there to do touch ups. Yeah. So, and they bring in consultants to, make sure that you're working on your, how to do your own stuff. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say,
so you're not putting like bright lime green on your eye, like in the middle of a shoot. Yeah.
That would be me.
Because they always look so great,
They do.
which is just interesting
They
that
do.
sometimes it's all done in a rush like that.
Yeah.
So
it was, I mean, don't get me wrong, there were some amazing aspects of it, and I really did love it while I was doing it, but there's, the glamour that people think is there is only just sometimes there. It's a small fraction.
I've always visioned is a lot of work.
Yeah. Yep,
a lot of work, and then, making sure when you're going live that you're getting all the facts right.
Yep.
And that you're getting, to the point.
Yep.
And then, I think what stressed me out is whenever a commercial's about to come, and are you getting everything in that you need to get in?
Yeah, you have 15 seconds, or, you have a producer counting down in your ear that you're about to go live, and you're thinking about what you have to say. And then of course, you go live and then you're trying to get everything in there at once. And then he's like, all right, you're cutting in 4, 3, 2, and you have to say, Sarah Strackhouse, CBS 7 News. Like just something quick or whatever it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
What happens when you get tongue-tied?
I mean, it happens. Don't get me wrong. You'll hear about it from the trolls later.
They'll be sending us
I
clips.
blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I've had a couple big mess ups. They were interesting.
It's funny because there's a European, and I cannot. This is sad. I'm bringing it up because I don't know, but there's a anchor and a co-anchor that do a show, and they make so many bloopers, but it's their daily show. Like,
Yep.
How many times have you had it to where you've had a guest on it and you just want to bust gut?
I mean, so many times.
And do you, or do you keep a straight face?
It depends the guest and it depends the story.
Right.
When I was a morning anchor, my meteorologist and I, we were really good friends.
Yeah.
So sometimes it was so hard to keep a straight face, and you just started like laughing, and you're live and you're like, I'm so sorry. Or saying to the audience, you could barely get out words, and you're like, we'll see you at 10. You're just like stuttering at that point. I'm like,
Cut fast.
Now on to the news. So
I love it.
yeah, I think it just depends. I mean, obviously, if there's like a burning building or something
Yeah,
like
you're
that, it's
not
a little
laughing about
less
that.
funny, but yeah.
I mean, so there's a whole glamorous side to it, but then
Yeah.
at the same time, there's a lot of stress.
Serious,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I'm sure anxiety and stress and just building all of that and being on the rush all the time and being away from your family, that had to be really tough.
It was really tough. And it was just like the nature of the stories that you were on. So when I was in West Texas, I was more energy and oil and gas. I was an oil and gas reporter, which
wow.
luckily oil and gas at the time was booming.
Right.
So it was more positive stories. That was
Right.
and I was the energy reporter. We had kind of different reporters in different sections. And so I did a lot of positive stories. I did some about, robberies or, drugs or whatever it was, but it usually wasn't murders. It wasn't children. It wasn't, I wasn't the trafficking beat, which was huge in West Texas. A lot of those things I wasn't in West Texas. Now, when I was in Dallas, I was nightside, more crime related. Those stories were the ones that tended to hit home, where it was hard to separate personal feelings from the story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember kind of my last few weeks in news, I was doing this story, and it was a little 3-year-old, and I'm not going to go into too many of the details, but it was a 3-year-old, and the first week she was missing. The second week they had found her body. The third week it was like all of this terrible abuse. And a lot of people will remember this story. It was back in 2017. And I remember every single night coming home. There were nights that I was supposed to be working till 10. I came back out. I was working till 11 or midnight back home. And trying to then hang out with your husband or have a normal conversation after that, it wears on you.
Yeah. Yes.
Because that
You almost
story
feel guilty, don't you?
You
for
feel
enjoying
guilty.
life?
Yes, you feel guilty for enjoying life. You can't shut down. You're like, is there something else I should have done? Should I have talked to someone else? Should I have called the officer about XYZ that I heard? Or, you can't shut down. And then you're getting text messages in the middle of the night and tips or the sheriff's office or whoever it is. So it's hard to shut down and be a normal person. And like you said, you feel like you have to like disassociate yourself or something in order to enjoy your home life then.
You almost have to.
Yeah.
But I know the counselor and you's going to say that,
Yeah.
but I always like to chime back at Carla and say, because we see it in all aspects of like first responders, and I would think you would be somewhat consider a first responder. You're getting the news out there. You're getting the information out there. You got to make sure it's accurate. You're trying to conserve your emotions at the same time. And then you're trying to figure out how are you going to go home and have a normal life.
Right. And at the time I didn't have kids. So I can't imagine going home and then, holding your 18-month-old or something.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. But it was hard enough just with a husband and
It's
dogs.
so, it's so hard to compartmentalize those things, and you have to really train your brain how to do them. There were a series of years that I worked in foster care and heard some horrific stories, right, and worked with kids who have been through so much, and just having to take that home with me, and it took me a while before I could really learn how to separate those two because you have to,
Right.
Yeah, and it's a training situation.
Yeah.
It takes some time to really figure that out, and I'm sure that, that probably led you to make some of the transitions you did in your life.
And I hope that in news that there's kind of better awareness around it now. But when I was working in news, there was no conversation about how to deal with it once you get home, how to shut off or how to compartmentalize.
It's very interesting you say that, because that was going to be a question I was going to ask. All the trauma you guys are experiencing, literally you are the forefront of what everybody gets to hear and see. It's scary.
It is scary. And I remember, I'll never forget one story. We arrived before the police and a bus had gone off an overpass, and it was a prison bus in West Texas, and it was like, weather and stuff like that. So it was nothing nefarious, but we got there and we just saw all these dead bodies. And, we don't video any of that, of course. Right. And generally reporters are supposed to stay back so that you're not seeing too much of that. The first responders are supposed to deal with that, but we heard it over the scanner and went to go check it out, and it ended up being this horrific thing. And you're not expecting to see that kind of stuff. No. But there was no conversation about like how to deal with that kind of stuff, at least when I worked in news, at least at the stations that I was at.
We do a lot of mental health trainings for, first responders, schools, and all these areas. I never really thought about the need to really make sure that we're taking care of our news reporters as well. Because, I'm just thinking about not only when you have to go on scene, but also then when later, as the days go by and you're interviewing the families and those emotions, it would be so interesting to really talk about what we could do in our news organizations about making sure that mental health is a priority.
Even bad weather stresses me out. So,
yeah.
You got your meteorologist. They probably need some help too.
Absolutely. Like they're up at 4 a.m. telling everyone like when to take shelter. I remember we were storm chasing a couple of times. I got pelted with hail and I was bleeding, and they were like, "Okay, you're going to be live in an hour." I'm like, "Great!" I'm so excited.
That's newsworthy.
Butterfly bandages.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Got a big old black eye from
literally. It was on the top of my head, and they were like, "Just put your hat on." I'm like, "Okay." You don't want to be the wimp that like doesn't do it. You know what I mean? So I'm just like out there with my hat. And I'm
You're telling everybody to be cautious, stay out of the weather.
Meanwhile, I'm like getting pelted.
Got a concussion.
And you see those memes. It's like the reporters like telling everyone to get out. Meanwhile, they're out there, and like you feel like so. I don't know, you feel very foolish in the moment, but you're like, well, I was told to go out here and do it.
Job,
so
right?
Yeah.
Well, you worked with Fox Business in New York. And so you grew up in New York area, and that's kind of where you went after you got out of school and you got your job there. That's a big difference because then you mentioned going on to
West
Texas.
Yes.
I don't know if any of y'all been to West Texas.
There's not a lot out there.
If you like some cotton fields, there's some of those out there.
It's exactly like Friday Night Lights. For those who have seen Friday Night Lights, like exactly what you picture it to be, it is.
Yes.
Or when I was there, at least I think it's grown a lot more since I've left. But
so was it a culture shock for you?
Oh, it was so shocking.
Well, lovely people. We do want to mark that they're lovely people. It's just not the prettiest scenery ever.
Well, and there's just not quite as much to do
in
what I was used to. And the culture is really, really different. It was in the Northeast, it's a lot more abrupt, upfront, in your face, aggressive. When I moved to West Texas, it was just very different. It was a lot more laid back, slower.
Well, strangers were saying hi to you.
Yes, people were saying hi to me. I literally, someone, I can't remember if I told you this, someone said hi to me in the airport, and I thought they were being rude. And so so I gave them the finger.
That's a New Yorker for you.
Well, and it's like, it happens so often in New York where
was it Texas?
It was in the Midland airport.
Oh,
yes.
my gosh.
And my husband was horrified. He was like, "You cannot behave like this." He was being rude. I was like, he was saying hi. So I was
Is that not the craziest thing?
Because in New York, especially when you're walking around alone, like as a girl, there's always weird, creepy things being said to you. So you just learn to either ignore, give the finger, whatever, whatever it is. And that was just my go-to. So my husband was like, "You cannot flip people off here."
Default finger.
Yes, it was literally like a reaction, like so my finger popped up.
I want to know what that person's reaction was. Sorry, ma'am.
He was just like surprised. And like, I remember he had a cowboy hat, and I was like, what is he doing with the cowboy hat?
It is West Texas.
Yeah, I know. He was like, "What are you doing here?" Yeah, so my husband
you need to go back to where you came from, girl.
Right? I know. It's time for you to leave.
Yeah. So funny. How long did it take you to adapt to the Texas way?
So the small town thing I could get used to pretty easily because I'm actually from a small town in New Jersey.
Okay.
But the Texas thing took a while, especially as a reporter. I was told I had to slow down. Every time I picked up the phone call, it was like, "Ma'am, I can't understand you. Slow down." I was like, "Okay."
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That was a great...
Well, I heard it a lot.
I know, you did.
Because I heard it a lot.
And you're like, I can't understand you because you're talking
I'm
too slow.
What is this drawl? Like, what is going on? I'm such a fish out of water. But like you said, you met great people. Yeah. There's really, really great people in West Texas, and we made really, really good friends. And we like had such a nice community down there. So it was, it was actually an easier adjustment than anticipated.
And one thing you can't get in New York that you got a lot of is those beautiful sunsets.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Those orange skies. Yes. Yeah. Amazing.
Or sweet tea.
Yes, we don't have sweet tea up north. No, like never. It's very rare to have
sweet tea. I don't drink sweet tea.
Yeah,
I do.
I'll have it, but I'm not.
It's not
I like mine syrup sweet.
She does. It's like, can you put?
But I'm from Texas though,
right?
So, but I remember I did a mission trip in New York, and I kid you not, I'm a social bug.
Yep.
I mean, I'll say hi to anybody,
yep.
right? And I got the same reaction from New Yorkers when I was going up to them. I'd be like, "Hi, how are you?" And it'd be like, "What are you?
Why are you talking to me?"
Yeah,
yeah. Like we don't know each other.
Right.
Pass on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God love it. Yeah. All right. Have a good day.
Great combo.
Yeah.
And
don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Brandy will talk to anybody, and she'll like just give random compliments. Someone's walking by, and she's like, "I like your shoes.
Yeah.
You have beautiful eyes."
You never know.
You know what? I'll take it. Yeah.
You never know how you're going to make someone's day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But then now things have shifted so much. I don't know if they think I'm hitting on them.
I know.
Or,
I know. Well, today's society is a little rough, so I feel like
rough.
you can't open your mouth anymore.
You can't. Yeah. It's unfortunate.
I know.
So you went from, reporting in New York to reporting in West Texas, and then you guys moved to the Dallas area, and you did what you called, the reporting was a little different. It was not what you were used to.
Yeah, and up north in New York area, I was in the field and doing video work and graphic design, so I was a lot more behind. And then in West Texas was my first kind of time in front of the camera. And then when we went, basically after my 2.5 contract, I was like, I've loved it here, but it's time to move us, honey. Like, let's go. Yeah. And I had originally moved to West Texas because my husband's job was in oil and gas. So once my contract was up, he was able to transfer with his company to Dallas.
Okay.
So, and then, like you said, it was just different here.
Yeah.
It's very different here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once you got here, you had more transformation because you decided to become a mother.
Yep.
Were you still doing reporting during that time?
No. So it was actually after those 3 weeks that I was telling you about, that was when I was working as a reporter nightside in Dallas. And after those 3 weeks, it was truly, I think it felt like it was a God thing. That last week, it was the Wednesday of that week, I got a text from a gentleman who owns a PR firm here and worked in news for a really long time. And he was like, "Hey, we're thinking about like opening a new reporting division and digital network. Would love to have, my VP and I would love to have dinner with you next week." And I didn't ask any questions. I was like, "Great, I'm there. Tell me what night." You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was like, I was so mentally just wanted to check out that I was like, "Okay, let's go." And I met with him, and it ended up just kind of being a fantastic transition into the digital network side of things. So I worked for him for 3, maybe almost 4 years. And I ended up having my baby while I was there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and it was great. It was a great company to work with, and we helped build out their whole reporting division and their content creation and their digital network and their studios and everything like that. But it was, it was still, you had to be there in person, and it was, 8 to 5, which was great. And it was, better money, better hours. I wasn't getting called at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have to work every Christmas. It was the first time I had Thanksgiving off in like 8 years. It was amazing.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Yeah.
another thing I didn't
That's
think about
another
that.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it was a wonderful opportunity when I did have my first son. He was about 8 months old, and I was like, you know, I'm missing all of the big moments. So
That's
was
the
when,
hardest part
yeah.
as a new mom and trying to, you know, continue with your career and build. And I admire those moms
I
so
do
much
too.
because it is so hard. It is hard to try to balance that. And
Yeah, it's really hard. And like, you just start to realize that, you know, suddenly he was crawling around and I was like, when did he start crawling? You know, and you just start to get in your head about all of these things. And I'm like, they're going to be young for, I've 5, 6, 7 years with them. And then they're out the door at school. Yeah. So I was like, you know, I'm ready to kind of step away and work for myself. And I just started in doing videography and photography. And then the company kind of grew from there.
Wow.
well, tell us about your company. What does your company do?
Yeah, so Strackhouse Media, and it's kind of three-pronged. We have a production arm that does live AV for events, and kind of, if you're not familiar with what AV is, it's kind of all of the, you know, lighting and the projection and the videos and actually show calling the show, directing and helping put all of that vision together and all the equipment and, you know, labor that goes with it. And then the other arm of Strackhouse Media is really the media and content creation. So we help with media training and some of those, you know, traditional media, TV aspects of things, and then videography, photography, graphic, you know, creation, that kind of stuff.
And people don't realize that is so much work.
It is
Yes.
Like
a
the
lot
little
of work.
we do.
Yeah.
I'm like, check me out.
I know. Brandy and I are like, oh.
This is not my cup of tea.
I know. Well, and when you're doing it all yourself too, and I mean,
Yeah.
you ladies are fantastic with everything you've done with this, but it's a lot of tedious steps.
Yes.
It might not be that difficult, but it's time consuming, which is half the battle because your time is important.
It is.
Well, and then you see a new idea come in, and you're like, man, I've been doing it wrong the whole time.
I
Like,
know.
Should I be posting differently?
Yeah,
Should I be
no,
doing
it's-
this? Should I be Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. It's
And
a
we
lot.
have
It
brought
adds up.
in a producer and, you know, a consultant. She's amazing and teaching us so much stuff, but there's just so much that you don't think about what
That's a small
your
part of
business
what she does. And then you got everything else. you
Right.
know. I mean, gauging your audience. I mean, it's a
Responding to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. Doing all the news and stuff, how much negative stuff did you have to deal with people that were watching? Did you have to deal with a lot of that?
So when I was in news, it was just when Facebook Live was becoming a thing.
Okay.
So we had like just built out our Facebook pages, and the bigger it got, the more excited you got, but the more negative feedback you got.
How do you handle that with
That's what I'm
people
wondering.
send some like crazy
Oh my
comments
gosh. Well,
in?
you're just, and it's just, they know how to pick, right? So it's like the things that you kind of feel most insecure about yourself are the things that, you know, they pick at. I remember one time I said coop instead of co-op, and I got annihilated, like flooded with messages about how I need to go back to Jersey or go back to New York, and, you know, we don't need you here. Like, you don't do Texas proud, and just, you know, all those things. Or then
Shame on you, Texans.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
the same thing in Dallas too. I had the same, you know.
I don't know. So here, I'm a true blue Texan, born and raised here.
Me too.
I'll stay here my entire life. She's more Dallas. I'm more suburbs of Dallas. I think you can tell with the way I talk. But I think it's a different genre of people. Dallas versus West Texas or suburbs.
Definitely.
And to be honest, it normally wasn't like women like you. It was either of you. It was more a lot of men. And then a lot of, I don't know how to say this without being rude, but a lot of very elderly women.
Trust fund women? Or?
I don't know.
You click on their picture for a second and you just see that they're like elderly
I'm
is
just
the
like,
only way to
if you-
kind of
here's
say
the
it. Yeah.
thing, though. I can't ever, like, we will get the negative comments and stuff eventually. I don't encourage it, but
I do think that as people get older, they get more bold with their statements and they start saying things that they're thinking, whereas before they may have filtered that.
Yeah.
And I think that there's less of a filter as you get older. So that's probably some of the reason, or they're at home just watching and they don't have a lot else to do. And so
I think that's what it was. It was a lot of the people who were home that weren't really doing anything. Because of course, like, you know, at least at the beginning, you like look at their page and you're like, oh, well, look at you sitting there not doing anything. I'm like, well, thank God you decided to comment on, you know, my dress today, you know, or, you know, it's one woman was like, ugh, that cheetah print is terrible. And it was like, I was like, well, thank you. And I looked at her profile and like, well, she clearly has, you know, issues. She's not wearing cheetah print. Maybe I shouldn't take this personally.
Yeah, exactly.
She's not rocking the cheetah print.
You know, and that's obviously but then you get like those random comments that are like really sweet or, you know, you're feeling insecure about your body and some guy's like, oh, those legs. I'm like, well, thank you. Yeah. Like, I'll take it. You know,
so kind of the good with bad.
Yeah. So luckily, in Texas, you know, there's more positive than bad, but you still get flooded with both.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so. I think that it's so interesting because you think most people would not say the majority of those things in person.
No.
They get really brave when it comes to writing comments that, you know, they don't have to say to your face, right? And so I feel like that's something that all of this technology and social media has done. It's made people really bold in their criticisms. You know, but they're not going to say it to your face.
Oh, no, never. People were always nice. I had this one guy one time who was like, you're Sarah Strackhouse? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, do you think you're prettier in person or on video camera? I was like, I don't know. Like, what a question. I was like, and I remember
I'm pretty all the time.
I felt so awkward. I was like, I can't tell if you're trying to diss me or like I don't know what's going on here.
Me a compliment or are you dogging on me?
I was like, this conversation's over. I'm so uncomfortable. Yeah.
So did you answer?
I just awkwardly giggled and walked away.
I'm surprised you didn't give him the finger. That's better.
That would be a better example.
I had been in Dallas for too long. I became a true Texan. Yeah, I became kinder. Yeah,
I love it.
So
that is so funny. But yeah,
I'd have given a finger to that one. Just saying.
Yeah. Right? Okay, you would have approved it?
Yeah, I would have.
Next time.
Okay. Yeah, Sarah!
I know, but I probably should have. But no, I remember, and I was door knocking for like a story about like meth dealers. It was like, it wasn't even like...
you were in the wrong neighborhood anyway, right?
I shouldn't have been there.
No one gave her.
I'd have been like, "Sir, are you high?"
Yeah. Should we interview?
Yeah.
Like, something you need to tell me.
Smile. Do you have all your teeth?
Yeah. Let me see your pinky finger.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh, this is hilarious.
She's definitely been in the field.
I know too much about what meth smells like.
Yeah, you do.
I remember walking one time. I was with my husband at the mall, and I go, I smell meth. And he goes, why do you know what meth smells like? Well, I was like, crime scenes. And he was like, oh my gosh.
We got to get you out of this.
Yeah, he's like, it's time.
That's hilarious.
Well, you also have 2 shows. Tell us about your shows.
Tell us about the shows.
So one show is called the Strackhouse. It's actually how like everything kind of started, even with my company. It's about just women who are inspiring and are making change in their communities in whatever it is that they're doing. And the other one is called The Right to Inspire. It's a little bit more about current events and politics. And it's just, you have the right, the freedom, and the power to be the change that you want to see in the world. So,
I love that.
You know, and I, you know, loved having you guys on because you were so helpful to the conversation and just shed light on things that I think people need to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we love it. But it, you know, you made it a lot easier too because you know you go into some interviews and it's so stiff.
Yeah,
it is.
You don't really, you're not sure, even though you know what you need to say. You're
right.
not sure if you should say it because there's this feeling.
Yeah,
but with you, it was just so easy.
Well, you guys made it easy right back. I mean,
and I love the name of the company, Strackhouse. That's just got a very good kick to it.
Yes, she has that reporter name, and she didn't even try.
She really does.
That's awesome.
Not us. I'm Mental Perk.
Yes,
perfect.
We are.
It works. It works. Yeah.
She's like, yes, you are. Of course.
Well, it's funny when I got married, my news director was like, you can't change your name. And I was like, pardon? Like, you can't tell me I can't change my name. He goes, no. Sarah Strackhouse has the perfect amount of alliteration.
Yes.
So while in my married name, I did take my husband's last name, I moved Strackhouse to my middle name. So at least it's still on all of my documentation and all of my like work. And he was like, yeah, you can't change it. Sorry.
So what's your married last name?
So I don't broadcast that because of
Strackhouse.
Yeah. And
but
just because of the safety of my kiddos and all that stuff. Yeah. And just keeping that, you know, all that anonymity,
Yeah.
but it's no.
Well, just
God,
a little
no.
tidbit of information.
Yeah.
Before I got married, I was also in alliteration. So,
Okay.
I was Carla K. Caffey.
That's actually a really good
How
name.
is that for an alliteration?
That's a good news name.
Carla K. Caffey.
Yeah.
I'm going to start calling you K. Caffey now.
Yes, I love that. That's a good news
I don't
name.
know. I was like, what is wrong with my
Yeah.
mom?
What
Was
was
my
your
mom high on
maiden name?
drugs? I don't know.
Brandy Schultz. I mean, it has a level of authority. Brandy Schultz.
Let's not.
But I was trying to figure out what my mom was saying, was just thinking in her brain in the hospital. You know, Carla K.
I know most women, they've experienced some severe trauma after carrying something for 9 months. They probably don't care at that point.
Just whatever.
I remember my second child, I wanted to name it Peyton if it was a boy, and we liked Caitlin, but it was too popular. So my husband was like, well, let's name her Paitlin. I'm like, that kid, she can't live it down.
Oh, no, because everybody's
always calling her Caitlin, Peyton, and she just shakes her head. She's like, all right. But, after 9 months of carrying her and giving birth, I'm like, this is your deal. You name it.
I answer to a lot of things, too.
I do, too. I mean,
I know.
it happens.
Well, I've heard Steakhouse. I've heard Stackhouse. Jackin' House was one.
Jackin'
Oh,
House.
that was interesting.
Were they jacking with you?
I mean,
so
they
funny.
probably should have been.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Well, let's look at it this way. Okay, let's take your years as a reporter.
Yeah.
And now let's take your host of your TV shows.
Yes.
And let's talk about some current events and how you would handle them in those roles.
All right.
Okay.
So let's talk a
Put
little
you on the
bit.
spot.
All right.
Let's talk about how you would handle, from those perspectives, covering all of these government cuts and disruptions.
That's a good question.
So what I would probably do is find a local government official on either side.
Okay.
So someone who sits in the Democratic chair, someone who sits in the Republican chair, and get their, first off, initial thoughts about how everything was being handled and what cuts were being made. Just seeing headlines, and reading little bits here and there, it seems like right now they're focusing on ideology changes rather than kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of money and all of the breakdowns. So I think that's kind of the first step, and then they're going to layer down. So that those are the questions that I would ask to a Republican and to a Democrat, so you get both sides of the story.
And I think the crazy thing about what you just said is so much information in such short time to get the point across, right? Because you've got these two very polar opposite opinions.
Yep.
And then you're interviewing them, and you got to try to figure out how you're going to get it all in, and you're going to get that one snippet that's going to actually go, okay, this is makes sense. Because I'm hearing so many different things right now that it's like, okay, what is it?
I know. And what the hardest part is, it depends. Like, you could talk to this Republican versus this Republican. You're obviously going to get a different answer.
Yeah.
You're going to talk to this Democrat versus this Democrat. You're going to get a different answer. But on that certain day, one might not be available. One might not be available. So whoever you talk to, I mean, in theory, you're trying to make sure that they're the best representation of that organization, but they might not be. Right. And then you have anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes, if you're lucky, to tell a story. Sometimes they're like, okay, you have to cut out, 10 seconds. You have to cut out 40 seconds. This story went long. This live went long. We had breaking news. Your story has to be 90 seconds, has to be 60 seconds, whatever it is. So you're cutting stuff down, still trying to tell both sides, still trying to tell the major story, and you have, 4 sentences to do it. So it just kind of depended on the day. You got really good at writing concise. You wrote, 4 or 5 letter sentences, and that was it. You want to hear as little of the reporter as possible. You want to hear from the experts the most.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of the grand scheme of things.
And then you try to cover all this hysteria, because there's hysteria everywhere, because it's just not, people haven't seen anything like this.
Right.
So,
and I always hated it's called MOS, man on the street, and getting like public reaction, but news directors love it because it's people out in the community.
Unfiltered.
Yeah, it's unfiltered. But it was so, you would interview 10 people and, oh my God, I hate these people. Or, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. You have no idea who you're going to run into. And people are so animated. I'm like, I can't believe we're putting this person on the news. But like,
Let me ask you a question. That's a good question. Yeah. Why do y'all put all the crackheads and stuff on the news?
Because they give the craziest, most sensational sound bites. And that's a lot of times what leads.
But it's like, it does not represent, like if you're in Texas doing that, you're going to go to like the hood of the hood and do an interview, and I'm like, that does not represent me.
No, it's so funny, and it's just a lot of these news directors where will say something like, "Oh, well, like this is the best soundbite," or they'll just be reading it, because they're checking stories, they're not necessarily watching it. They'll be reading it, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's a great soundbite," not knowing this person is toothless, has one eye, and like their hair sticking up. I'm like, all right, well, okay, that's the one you want to use.
It takes all kinds to make America, right? We're a melting pot.
But they always emphasize the ones that are not right. It's like every time.
But, you pull a little bit of everyone, and you try to go to, a random, really busy sandwich shop, or, you go stand on the corner.
I'm thinking in my head, though, when you're talking about this, news changes on the fly.
On the fly.
So how stressful is it to think, oh, my gosh, and like, let's say I'm trying to figure out, like, let's say something major happens today. Mm-hmm. What would be your first step for getting the story?
Getting on scene.
Mm-hmm. And then, and you're getting on scene through, listening to...
You're literally just like, oh, national news you're talking about, or local?
No, local.
Local, so you're just literally getting in the car and driving there.
I know, but you're getting that information from
the scanner.
Police scanners.
Usually a police scanner, or you'll get a tip from someone, or if you're really good friends with, you get really good friends with your local law enforcement, so they'll text you like, hey, we're going out to the scene here, I'll meet you there. Or like, hey, you should send a car there.
Okay.
Or, whatever it is. And like I said, the scanner ends up being kind of your best bet. But it was hard also when we were in West Texas, in Odessa. It was one of the murder capitals of the country for a while, and
that's hard to believe.
I think it was like back in the 80s, right?
Because of drug cartel, and
I'm sure.
Oil and gas.
I'm not sure why, but I'm sure that had to do with it. It was something the boom in the 80s, and then there was the bust, and then the bust is when it's hardest because, everyone's hurting for money. Yeah. And then the boom came back in 2012, and that's when my husband moved there. And then the bust started happening in 2016, 2017 when we moved. So we were kind of getting on the tail end of that.
Okay.
And it was, it got to the point where you would hear stuff over the scanner, and they're like, well, did they die? Okay, then we're not going out to the scene.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really sad, and it was, all of the traffic, and, it was just...
Didn't they, and correct me if I'm wrong, you may know, but you might have gotten in later, but didn't they have a lot of prostitution stuff going on because of the oil
show?
Oh,
it was when the oil show came every 2 years, and basically it's like the Super Bowl for the oil world. Yeah. Like people from Saudi are flying in, people from all over the world are flying in for this oil show because it's such a big show. And that was actually... I did a ton of stories on prostitution. There was one time, and I love these stories.
Keep on coming.
They got to make a living somehow.
I could talk to her all day.
I'll never forget. There was one time I was working on the computer, and the way my back was, I was positioned where the entire newsroom could see my computer. And the page isn't up anymore, but it's called Backpage, or I don't know if it's now up again or something. But anyways, I'm researching Backpage, and I'm like trying to find like any words that have to do anything with oil, like pump, jack, like all these like words that I'm sticking in there, and that's how people find prostitutes at the time. So I'm like looking up all these things, and there's like things popping up on my computer, and my news director goes, "What the hell are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just researching for the story, I promise. Like I'm not looking up weird shit, like weird porn." I'm like, sorry, language. I was like, I promise I'm not like doing any of this. I was like so, my heart was pounding so fast, and I had just gone down like a trail, like not even thinking. I was like, okay, I'm gonna look up Backpage, and I was like, oh, this is Backpage. Ooh, okay, and
oh my gosh,
it ended up just,
I'd have been like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, and then everyone came huddled around my computer, and everyone was like, ooh, what do we got? So it just ended up being, thank God my news director was cool about it, knowing that I wasn't researching porn in the middle of the day.
That is so funny. I never thought about the prostitution part.
Oh, no, yeah.
Well, because you think about the Super Bowl, the World Cup, the World Series, all of those games are a madhouse for prostitution. That's when all of the people are flying in, and every pimp has their hub set up, and they have secret words about, how they research and just all that stuff. So it was, that's their Super Bowl.
Yeah, I remember a lot of reports on. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Little Odessa.
Yep.
Well, let's go to our next topic.
You want to get away from prostitution?
Dang it.
Yeah.
It is the world's oldest profession, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to the booing of Taylor Swift.
Okay, the next story.
I knew she's going to bring this up. And I love it.
I mean, I have a personal preference or a personal thought on it, but as a reporter, what I would say
We'll get to the personal.
Yeah.
I was going to say the reporter side of things would just be MOS for this story. I mean, what is an official going to say? Like, you're not going to have a lawyer weigh in. You're not going to have a town official weigh in. You're not going to have law enforcement weigh in. If you had a really good entertainment lawyer or a PR person, you could have them weigh in. But it would mostly be, or a branding person even might be a good kind of weigh in to kind of talk about what this does to her brand, what it's been doing to her brand, being a Chiefs fan and being with Travis Kelce. Stuff like that is what you could ask. And what is public perception? What do you think she should do? What do you think should be her next steps? But I think that most people, it would just be an MOS story. It would just be, what does the community think about this and her?
Just kind of in that pop culture.
So what does Sarah think about it personally?
Well, I have never... So I don't care about her.
Yeah,
I love bopping along to her songs.
I do too.
I'm not going to go to a concert.
Me either.
But I don't care about her.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's shown at every single, football game, I was like, okay, it's getting excessive. Through no fault of her own. It's not like she's diving in the field naked or something.
It's the media's problem. I mean, they're the ones that are they're the ones showing it
because they're playing it up. So it's no fault of her own. And she's not doing anything to get booed. The crowd is just booing her. But one thing I can't stand is when celebrities get up there and try to endorse or talk about politics. And that is something that she's done. And that's, I think, why she's gotten the booing and all of that stuff. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I'm not asking for your opinion. I want to hear you sing.
Yeah, and Trump's 2 sweets down from her. So,
So,
I mean, she's going to get it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So
that's just kind of my personal opinion. I don't hate her or love her. I mean,
I'm the same way. I'm on the same page.
If she comes on the radio, I'm not going to switch it.
She's got good music.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the music's good.
Songs.
Yeah, I do too. But I'm like you. I'm not going to put her up there to where it's like, And I'm not going to listen to a musician's opinion on or judge them based on their political decisions.
No, because they don't represent most of the country, most of the world. They're the 1%, flying their private jets across country and then talking about emissions. I just...
Yeah. There you go.
Yes.
I don't know. That's not where I really get my news.
Yeah.
No, I think that... most people are probably feeling the same way. I think her deep followers are feeling very taken back by that, and I think that if people don't like her, they're, continuing the whole narrative of booing her. But in the end, I mean, she's successful. She wasn't bothering anyone. She's there to support.
Nice.
Yeah,
she seems like she gives good tips. She pays her people well. It seems from what I've heard.
Lots
I obviously
of charity
don't know,
work.
but
Yeah. So. One way or the other. I mean, it's just feeding the narrative.
I'm like you, living in the light of that. She's not choosing a lot of the scrutiny. She's just trying to do her thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think a lot of people, we just got to stop picking everything apart from someone. And just, But I'm like you. I'm not a Swiftie, what they call them. But I do appreciate her music.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
But I think we have to get out of this political divide. If someone doesn't ride the same side that we do, that we need to tear them down.
Oh, no.
Right?
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. I will say, though, that it does seem like things are a little, I think we're seeing a little bit of peace, but also a little bit of fear with all the decisions that are being made right now. Yeah. And I think that it's, you just got to figure out how to process it and get through it.
Exactly.
We did for 4 years, right?
100%.
Yeah. Yep. We survived.
Yep. I know. If my candidate hadn't won, I would just prepare for, the next 4 years and what that means for me and my family and how to better my situation.
But that's done for years.
You can't change it. I'm not going to go into a closet and cry about it or,
I'm going to live my life.
Or blast everything on social media.
Or blast everything and hate everyone. Yeah. That's not how I reacted years ago.
Exactly.
Again, we go back to social media and the amount of hate that people spew on there. People didn't do that before, right? So it's just a whole new platform for people to say things.
Yeah, before we passed a note.
Yeah. Girl, can you believe what just happened? Yeah.
Is this her handwriting? I think it is.
Remember when AIM came out and you're on there for 30 minutes? I had a AOL time limit.
I was like, yeah.
AOL time limit. And I'm on there for 30 minutes and then it just shuts off and I'm like, no. Yeah.
I don't even think I had one of those.
I don't either. Ours was I think 8th grade was when it came out, maybe 7th grade or something. But yeah, it was.
She's younger than we are, Brandy.
She is.
Barely. I mean, no.
She's younger.
All right, third topic. Just a little while ago, RFK just got confirmed. And let's talk about, because you are a previous nutritionist and trainer, what do you think about making America healthy again?
I personally love it because especially having kids and being pregnant, when you're pregnant, you're so focused on what you're putting in your body. And
I wasn't.
Well,
I think I ate a box of ding dongs.
Well, I was going to say,
I mean, taco from Taco Bueno every day.
It might be because of my past, but I think about in college, you're drinking from a jungle juice, you have no idea what's in there, right?
Yeah.
Or you're putting whatever in your body. I was always a soccer player. We were eating 10,000 calories a day and trying to gain weight, right? And it was just anything I could shovel into my mouth. And then I think just getting older, personal training. And then once I got pregnant, I'm like, I don't want to put dyes. I don't want to put corn syrup. I don't want to put this, And I went with a midwife group. So I think they were more conscious of that too.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, make sure this isn't on your skin. Salicylic acid, all of these things that I had to change all of my makeup. And in my mind, I'm like, well, if I'm changing all of these things I'm putting in my body in my makeup while I'm pregnant, why am I putting this in my body anyways?
Wow.
So once I had kids too, we got rid of things that had red dyes. Now, don't get me wrong. If we're out and about and, we're having a nice day and whatever, I'm going to give my kid a Snickers, I'm not saying that you can't give your kid a Gatorade or whatever it is, but we generally at home, we try to stay away from sugars and red dyes and, just things that are going to harm us on the everyday scale.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that he's banning those things and trying to make basically America as healthy as all these other countries.
Yeah.
Look at the ingredients in Cheetos in the UK.
Yeah.
And then here...
It's 50 to 1.
It's insane. Then here they have 2 different versions. They have one, and I'm sorry for calling Cheetos, but the red chip, that's really cheesy and skinny. So let's talk about those. But the,
Cheetos.
Yeah, the normal ones have...
Are we talking off-brand?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I don't know. I mean, I just don't want, Cheetos to get mad at me suddenly. But they have a ton of dye in them.
Yeah.
You would think that cheese would make it color enough. Well, no, they have dye in them. And if you buy, you can search for the Simply Cheeto that they have here in America, which has it taken out, but they're not in all grocery stores. Most of the Cheetos are in every grocery store, gas station, everything. The Simply version has all of these different ingredients. It's basically, I think, a UK version or a Europe version.
A healthier version.
Yeah. So
I do buy the Simply Cheetos.
I do too. And they're just as good.
Yeah,
they're
just
not better,
good.
right?
Yeah.
So little things like that, and I'm not saying that you can't give your kid a Reese's.
I think everything's in moderation.
In moderation,
right?
Don't get me wrong. If we're having a struggle day and I need to give him a gummy bear,
give him
it's going to
Snickers.
happen. Yeah, it's going to happen, right? Eat the red gummy bear. I don't care. Just buy it for 4 minutes.
That's so funny. But, you think about it, when we're healthier, we're mentally healthier.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big, narrative here that we can really, as we're making our nation healthier, you're going to see our mental health improve.
I'm excited about it.
I am super excited about it.
I think that's a really interesting correlation that I think a lot of people don't get.
Yeah.
Is, when you don't work out, whatever the workout looks like to you, when you eat like crap, you just feel crappy.
Yeah.
You feel crappy.
Yeah. Very
You
true.
don't like the way you look. You don't feel good. You have no energy. I mean, and it just really takes away from the quality of life.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this is it's going to really impact in so many ways.
Well, I think he's actually going to put a lot more emphasis on the FDA and what they approve and what they don't approve, because that's the thing that surprises me. All the stuff that the FDA will approve, but then there's other stuff that's just as important, if not more important.
Yep.
They're just looking past.
Well, I give my kids like elderberry every day, and it just
supposed to be amazing.
It's amazing. Like since they've started taking it, they like don't get sick unless it's like a fever, a teething fever or something. They do not get sick, and it's been like it's not FDA approved. They don't have a version that doesn't have sugar in it. But so I have to find the ones that are off-brand that have honey in it or something like that. And I'm like, why isn't that approved versus all this crap is?
Well, I think it's money. It's absolutely money, which is so sad because, you think about it. I don't know who I was telling the other day, but, you think about the old world medicine in the 16th, 15th, 14th century. It was all like they considered them witch doctors.
It was all herbs.
It was all natural stuff that your body could handle and process, and it was good for you.
Yep.
And, you went through this
But they still died earlier.
Yes, but it was from spears and horsing accidents.
Thank you, Sarah. She's killed my whole vibe. Wow. Okay, so anyway.
They didn't know what a gluten allergy was, so they were feeding them bread while they had celiac, and they were slowly dying. Like,
I'm done with you.
This is too funny.
But yes, okay, so you know what I'm talking about, even though I don't know what I'm talking about anymore.
Yes,
but I'm excited. What do you think about vaccines, and what are you thinking on vaccines?
So, oh gosh, I don't know. Right now, my kids have most vaccines. And I think the ones that like I got as kids and, that have been around for a long, long time and have been proven effective, 20-year studies, 30-year studies, all of these things. My kids have those. Newer ones, test ones, the yearly flu shots. My kids don't get those.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
and you're seeing a lot of that though. You're seeing a lot of parents now not even get their kids vaccinated at all.
I know.
Well, and I think that's scary in and of itself.
I think it is scary because I don't want a child getting sick and dying.
Sarah's making a good point. There's things that have been proven over time to be very effective, and we've knocked out a lot of deadly childhood diseases because of them.
Right.
So it's really important for people to work with their doctors and make sure they're making informed decisions. But vaccines are not bad. I just feel like that what's being talked about here is, again, we're building that hysteria back up. But what they're saying is we need to make sure we're doing proper research and proper testing on these things so that we don't have
we're not the lab rats.
I'm not going to be the lab rat. Yeah. I was, when the major vaccine that I think we all know about that came out recently, I was pregnant and breastfeeding. I was like, I'm not going to be a lab rat for giving my child, this unknown vaccine, that may or may not be effective, that may or may not harm me. I'm just not going to be.
I'm proudly unvaccinated.
I am too.
I'm not going to hold back on that. I think it should be a choice. It should be a choice for you to make that decision, not big pharma or the government.
Right.
To me, my biggest struggle was the people that got vaccinated were blaming the ones that weren't unvaccinated because they were still getting sick. I'm like,
but if you're vaccinated,
you shouldn't worry about it. That's right.
Yeah, I'm not gonna take Advil because you have a headache.
Yeah. Exactly. That's a good point, actually. That's a good point. I should throw. I mean, if I'd have known that back then, I'd have thrown that out there.
That's a good point.
It's just so frustrating, that whole mindset. It's not like you're talking about little babies, because like those stats were, little babies weren't necessarily geting it. Like those weren't the biggest issues. It was, a lot of elderly and people who are like immune suppressed. Yeah. So it's the same thing. If you want to put something in your body, that is your choice completely, and it should be my choice as well.
100%.
So.
And, I think there's a lot of great research and things going on about ways to conquer a lot of these illnesses. And I think that giving people the space and the proper procedures to do that, so much can happen and so many good things can happen. But I feel like the main issue there is, are we testing enough? Are we researching enough? Are we getting enough answers before we put this onto people? So I think that's super important, because the idea is to save people, but then are we also hurting them? So,
right.
What's the long-term effects for, doing this? It may give you immediate relief, but long-term, I think we're going to see a lot of stuff happening.
Absolutely.
Which is scary because a lot of our loved ones have been forced to do it.
Right,
so.
right. And that's the scary part of it is you don't know what's going to happen 20 years from now, or, you know, all of the businesses that made it a mandate of like you're getting fired or not. Like, yes, like, for example, like President Trump just said, all the people who can come back into the military who were fired previously and get back pay and all that stuff. And I mean, that's fantastic now, but they spent how long not having a job? They spent how long struggling? They spent how long maybe suddenly without something that their family needed, and it put them in hardships. You know, you can't go back and redo those things. So that's some of the sad, you know, aspects of forcing this, you know, vaccine on someone.
The mental toll it took on these people.
Yes, exactly.
Had to have been tremendous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's sad.
That whole time is definitely history making. That whole situation of the pandemic is definitely history making in so many ways. And I'm hoping that through that we've learned a lot of lessons as a nation and as a government and as people on how to handle the next one that comes around.
Well, and that's what's scary. The next one,
it's going to come.
It is going to come.
Yeah.
And it unfortunately, you hope it's not going to be even more serious than what COVID was.
Right.
But with the way we handled this last one, are people actually going to take that information, if it's worse, and actually take the necessary steps to be precautious?
Right.
Whereas to now, I mean, I think everybody's so over what we just went through.
Right.
I don't know that anybody would take anything serious
Would take
right
it
now,
seriously.
which is scary to me.
Yeah. And I think that people realized, especially during this time, like how impressionable we are as a society. You know, we closed down businesses.
Yes.
We all walked around with masks. You did, you know, you followed all of these rules, or you know, a lot of people
Some
went
places
and
you didn't have a choice.
Well, that's what I mean. Like a lot of places you couldn't go into your local CVS without wearing a mask. So you either don't go to CVS or you do, you know, and that's the right of the business. That's fine. But like there were also a lot of things coming down federally that just make you think, if something came down federally, that you didn't believe in, that you didn't agree with, you know, am I going to stand up and do something about it? Potentially get arrested, like the hairstylist who kept her place open here in Dallas, or am I just gonna conform because it's easier and I don't want something to come back on my family or to lose my job?
Right.
So, and I'm not saying one is better or right, because you have to do what's best for you and your family, but it's that like mindset and that mental instability. I mean, I'm sure you can talk to this as a mental health professional. Is, you know, that can be breaking for people.
It is, and it did, and it broke a lot of people, and people are just now coming out of that haze of the amount of depression, anxiety that we saw during that time. So I think it was very traumatic for a lot of people, but again, we have to learn from, you know, what went wrong, what went right, and try to do better the next time, and so that people aren't as negatively affected, I think, for sure. Well, this has been an amazing Galentine's Day with two of my gals here. And I wish we had a little champagne and sugar cookies, but we don't. But that would have been...
not good for you.
It's okay. Galentine's is the one time that it's okay.
There are special occasions for sugar. There are times
and we
for
make
sugar.
exceptions for wine.
Yes, absolutely. But I want Sarah to tell a little bit about how people can reach out to her, where they can find her shows, and kind of fill in on how people can find you.
Yeah. You can go to Strackhouse Media. It's not Stackhouse or Steakhouse. It's
got an R.
STR. Yeah, strackhousemedia.com. We have a contact page. Happy to reach out. And that's pretty much where you can find all of our information.
And your shows again are?
The Right to Inspire, and it's on all of your normal streaming platforms, audio platforms, all of that. And then the Strackhouse.
And those are great shows, so informative.
Yeah, they are.
Check
They
them
really
out,
are.
watch them. They're amazing. She's amazing. And we're so glad that she's part of our
thank
day
you.
today. Thank you so much for coming on.
This has been amazing. So much fun talking with you ladies.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to talk to someone you trust. Get connected to a mental health professional who can help you find ways to cope and ultimately feel better. If you are having suicidal or self-harm thoughts or thoughts of hurting another person, please go to the nearest ER, call 911, or contact the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Thank you for tuning in to Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure every one of you knows you're worthy. We're in this together.